What's it like to be a pitcher in this Orioles minor league system? Well, today we're going to find out as O's relief prospect Keegan Gillis joins the show, coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we have a special guest joining us. He is Keagan Gillis, the right-handed pitcher who was drafted by the Orioles in the 15th round of the 2021 MLB draft. He comes on the show to talk a lot about what it is like to be in minor league camp currently with the Orioles. We will talk about his journey to becoming a high velo, big time ride, like really good right-hander. We'll talk about a little bit about his time at Tulane, what he does in the offseason, and much, much more, and a little bit of Orioles news and notes on the top as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So before we get to Keagan Gillis, just a few Orioles news and notes on the top of this episode before our interview. The first is Orioles got some more good news on Cedric Mullins on Wednesday. Now remember, he left Monday's game with a little bit of right hamstring soreness, came out after reaching base in the first inning. Brandon Hyde said after the game they weren't concerned at all. He was day-to-day. They weren't planning to do an MRI, but we were a little worried on this podcast. He had those multiple right groin injuries last caused us a lot of time, and though there's not the same injury, it's the same area of the leg, so it makes you worry a little bit at this point in spring training. Then the Orioles Tuesday said, well, we still consider him day-to-day, but we're not ruling out we might do an MRI just to get a baseline. Well, on Wednesday, the Orioles did do that MRI. It seemed like they were going to do it at some point. And the O's said that MRI is clean and Mullins should be back in spring training games at some point next week, which is great news and says, unless anything else comes up, he will be ready for opening day. Crisis averted a bit, but if you want to hear what the Orioles would do without Cedric Mullins, make sure to go back and check out Tuesday's episode of the pod this week. But that was really the big Orioles news, I would say, for the day. The O's did have a game in spring training on Wednesday. First one spring, I believe, a 6 p.m. start at Ed Smith Stadium. Now, as I'm recording here on Wednesday evening, that game is still going on, but it was good to see Anthony Santander with 3 RBIs already, including a 2-run homer in the first inning off of Pirates ace Mitch Keller. So that's always a solid thing to see for the Orioles. And on the pitching side, their pitchers just continue to look really good in spring training. And we didn't have any video feed of this one, but Julio Teheran just went out there and threw another 2 scoreless innings. He got the start in Wednesday's game. Bruce Zimmerman backed him up after that. And again, Julio Teheran just continues to say, look, I've got a chance to make this opening day roster after the Orioles brought in the veteran on the minor league deal last week. And we will kind of continue to see how that plays out for the O's. In terms of the lineup, a couple of interesting things. Jorge Mateo got the start at second base on Wednesday. The Orioles have made a big deal about working out Mateo in center field and left field and turning him into an outfielder. But they've also talked about how they're going to work him out more at second base this offseason, just to give him another look, just a little more utility. He played a little second when he first came over to the Orioles off waivers from the Padres in 2021. But it's just more versatility for a guy trying to hold on to that roster spot. And then it was Austin Hayes who got the start in center field on Wednesday night. And there's always the question, Austin Hayes can certainly play center field. He did it when he first came up. Can he be a reliable center fielder? I think he could be. And it's nice to see that he got a start out there on Wednesday with the O's taking on the Pirates. But we're going to get to Keagan Gillis. He is one of my favorite pitchers in the Orioles system. As I mentioned, 15th round pick out of Tulane in 2021, right-handed pitcher who had a 5-year career at Tulane. And after his junior year, he was a starter as a sophomore and a junior in their weekend rotation. Thought he would get drafted, but things just didn't go his way. Then you had the shortened draft in 2020 where he didn't get picked. And finally, after 2021, after his 5th season when he really dominated college ball, 28 innings and a 0.96 ERA for Gillis that season, he gets selected by the Orioles. And it was injuries early for Keegan Gillis caused him to miss essentially a large chunk of the 2022 season and a little bit of even 2021 after he got drafted. But he got healthy last season and he really looked good. Started the year at Aberdeen last year, 17 innings, had a .54 ERA. That is one earned run in 17 innings with 27 strikeouts and 4 walks for the big right-hander. The O's said, okay, it's time to go to Double A Bowie. He didn't have the same level of success, but still 24 innings, 3.75 ERA, 34 strikeouts to just 10 walks in that time with the Bay Sox. And at this point, Gillis, I mean, he just turned 26 in January, so he's a little bit old for the level. And there's definitely a solid chance he starts the year back in Double A Bowie, but he could even begin the year in Triple A Norfolk. And even if he doesn't, it's probably a short promotion to Triple A if he's pitching well early in the year. And at that point, he's got big league stuff. It is a devastating fastball in the upper 90s. It is a good cutter, and it is an improving splitter. And when we talk with Keegan in this interview, his stuff, his body, I mean, he's 6'8", 270. It's going to make you think about another dominant Orioles reliever, and we're going to get to that in this conversation with Keagan Gillis. So that is coming up right now. Right after this break, we're going to talk with Orioles minor league relief pitcher prospect, Keegan Gillis. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. You want to watch anything, especially you want to watch sports? Amazon Fire TV is the way to go. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV and provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're just going to want to have a Fire TV. It is truly that simple. And if you haven't checked out all of Fire TV's channels, they've got plenty of them where you can watch March Madness, the NBA, MLB, and lots more. Well, you should check them out. Trust me on this one. And to learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right, so we've got a special guest joining us on today's show. He was the 15th round pick of the Baltimore Orioles, a right-handed pitcher out of Tulane in the 2021 draft. He made it up to Double A Bowie in the O's system last year, and he is currently down in Florida with the O's. He is Keegan Gillis. Keegan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
I think I got to start with this. You have, I believe I have this right, you've appeared in one big league spring training game so far, but you've been in minor league camp. What is the process when you're in minor league camp? Like, do you know which days you're going to go with the big league team? When do they tell you? Like, what is that like? Because it's usually a large list of arms and position players just in case, somebody goes over a pitch count or whatever it may be. But like, say you're going to Clearwater, on Friday. When would you find out when you're going with the big league team?
Recently, it's been like 4:30 the day before. We'll find out at some point. Usually, sometimes we'll have like a month schedule where we have certain weeks, added out for us. But a lot of that's, based on our load for the week. Are we throwing pins? Are we getting live? So a lot of that depends on how your throwing is for the week. But usually, you'll get that text, the afternoon before, like, hey, you're going to Ed Smith at 8:45, be there for breakfast, and then that's kind of how it goes.
What's the mindset like? Because there's no guarantee at all you get into that game. You're just kind of there just in case. I mean, at best, maybe a game goes long, you get one inning. Sometimes you get one out, like I think you got in your one outing. So what's the mindset when you get on that bus and you're like, all right, they might need me today. I might just sit there.
Honestly, it's exciting just to be on that side. I mean, seeing the big leaguers, the guys that have been there for years, their routines, the way they do it. So just the mindset of going in and having fun with it. That's all you can really do at this point. And then when your name's called, just going out there and doing your thing. You don't need to do anything to really impress everyone. You're just going out there, throwing strikes, doing your thing. And that's what you're there for. But other than that, yeah, it's exciting to be there. I've been there probably 6 to 8 times already. I've thrown in one game, 3 pitches in one game. So, I've kind of gotten a feel for how it goes now. But yeah, just getting in front of those guys, showcasing, your size, your ability, what you can do is always a good thing.
So I want to talk a little bit about your 2023 because you had a great season, made it up to Double A with the Orioles after, essentially being unhittable in Aberdeen. You made your way up to Bowie and got to face those Double A hitters. You now are, 5, 6 months removed from that season, kind of wrapping up. When you look back fondly, like what's that number one thing you remember from 2023, which really became your first essentially full season in minor league baseball because of the draft and then missing some time in 2022.
Yeah, honestly, the main goal I had coming in to that point, I mean, I was hurt for a year and a half before that since I got drafted. So it was just staying healthy for a full year. That was my main goal going in there. I knew I had the stuff, I knew I had the power, I knew I had everything I needed to be there and beyond that. But it was just going in there and showing the org that I could be healthy for a full season. They could rely on me in the back end of a bullpen for 150 games or whatever that might be. So that was the main mindset, and I just kind of went in and did my thing. I didn't try to overthink it. Just stayed to my routines and got in there and threw the ball. And, I think I went 13 innings without, giving up a hit or a run, which was, I was ecstatic about, but I wasn't really worried about the results as much as just developing through that year. And really setting myself up for this year and next year is really what I was trying to do. Like I said, showing the org that I could stay healthy, showing them what I had in the back end of a bullpen. And then, coming in this year, just trying to not even really repeat it, but just keep growing and my patterns and my mechanics and my routines and everything, just, trying to be as consistent as possible.
And I wanted to get into kind of how you set those routines, what your workouts look like. I know you're a guy who is very in tune with your velo, very in tune with how your pitches move, very in tune with looking at TrackMan data, looking at the Edgertronic, like pitch after pitch, like seeing that stuff. Where did you learn that? Was it at Tulane? Was it before? Was it in the off season? Like, where did you start to really pick that stuff up as a part of becoming the pitcher you are?
So I got it a little bit in college. Towards the end of my career, we started getting TrackMan and different devices to really track what I was doing. But I mean, I knew the bare minimum coming into the Orioles, getting drafted that year. But the Orioles are very analytical, so I learned the bulk of what I know now from a lot of the pitching coaches and the staff here, and they really taught me about, like, okay, I knew what induced vertical was, I knew what horizontal break was, all that good stuff, but I didn't really know how it applied to me in certain ways with vertical approach angles and all this crazy stuff. I mean, I've gotten spreadsheets of data back, and it's overwhelming. You honestly don't know what to do with it a lot of the time. But they're really good at kind of guiding you through it, what's working for you, what you need to work on through those data points, and setting yourself up for the future. That's the biggest thing with them, is taking those data points, putting it into your bullpens, your throwing routines, and then ultimately it shows up in the games.
When you're throwing your pens in the off season, you're either working on something or you're just trying to get the feel back, especially the ones very early when you first get to Florida. Are you more looking for the feel, or are you more looking for the data on your pitches and how they're matching up with when you're at your best, or is it kind of a combination of both?
I would say a combination of both for sure. Because when you're on the mound in the game, you don't know what your data is. You just know how you're feeling and what you're doing. But it's also tough to just put a marker on what you feel. The data really backs up, gives you a definite number of what you're doing. And then you kind of just base your feel off of that. I mean, I know when I'm a little out of sync, when my ball's not riding enough, when my cutter's not, getting the exact movement I want, or splitter. I can kind of feel those things now that I've been acclimated for 2 or 3 years on the data sets and what I'm trying to do with each pitch and each location. So a lot of that kind of plays off of itself in a way, because once you get in the game, feel is the only thing you really have going for you at that point. And you can read the hitters and kind of what they're doing against you, but that's mostly what it is.
Yeah, and a lot of people, if they want to, can watch some of your off-season bullpens, because I know Top Velocity has kind of
Oh yeah.
chronicled your time. I wanted to hear like your perspective on how you got involved with them and what it's been like to work there, because I know some of that has been getting you up to 96, 97, 98 with the fastball and improving your stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being completely honest, it saved my career in a lot of ways. Top Velocity, I attribute a lot of my success to them. Brent Porsche over there has done a really good job of creating a program and creating a workout that can really, turn you from, a low level pitcher to a major leaguer very quickly. So a lot of that is attributed to him. I mean, coming out of my junior year, supposed to be this draft pick, and then it ended up not working, didn't have the best year. And that's kind of when my rock bottom of my career kind of was at that point. The draft was like slipping away from me a little bit. I was getting a little older. So I was like, you know what, this is my last stand. I need to go to Top Velocity and just check it out. Just give it a try. It's in my backyard. I've heard a lot of great things about them. And I went there, and in 2 months, I saw a lot of great things. My velo jumped up 3 or 4 miles an hour on average. And I was like, whoa, this is a different type of thing. And then I just got addicted at that point, and I've been there for almost 5 years now. And just learning the science behind, mechanics and the science behind the weight room stuff that we do that attributes to the mound. I mean, it's so significant in my career now that if I don't do it, I know that I'm going to degress a lot. So it's something that I put into my routines every day now, and it's really helped me out these past couple of years.
What's been the work there, and just the work in general this offseason? Any new pitches? Has it been velo gain? Has it been work on your body? What's kind of been the 23 and the 24 offseason looking like?
Definitely all the above. We had probably three main goals. One was upper body strength this year, putting on some weight, just to be able to hold the load for 160 games. It's really hard to like keep your strength up through the season, so I almost try to go in not overweight, but a tad overweight, because you're going to lose that weight very quickly. So building upper body strength was a big deal for me this year, just to stay injury free and injury prevention type of stuff. I worked on a new splitter this off season, which is performing very well for me. Still a little bit of a work in progress, but overall I'm getting very consistent with it. I had a splitter last year. I didn't really utilize it very much, just because it was, something I was really trying to work towards as like a kind of a pitch to a left-handers, because I was kind of, I don't know, a little inconsistent with those type of lefties. But overall, yeah, I tried a new grip with it. Forrest Herman kind of helped me out with that. So I got it's been way better than it was last year. So I'll probably be utilizing that as my second best pitch this year, just depending on situations. But that was pitch design wise, that was probably the biggest one. And then overall, you're always trying to gain velo. And a lot of that comes from the weight room, the upper body stuff, like I talked about before. It all kind of translates into each other.
So you're coming in with fastball, splitter, cutter for this year?
That's correct.
Is that the mix?
That's correct, yeah.
And I did want to ask about this because, listen, we saw you throw the splitter in Bowie last year, and this is kind of the image that Orioles fans get in their head when they see highlights of you and watch you pitch. Is they see a what are you 6'8", big 6'8" guy on the mound, big right-hander with a big, like, quote unquote rising fastball and a splitter. And the name that comes to their mind is Felix Bautista. And maybe that's a little unfair to put you two in the same sentence after the season that he just had. And of course, the O's are going to miss him this year as he got Tommy John. But you've got somebody who, in terms of your mix and your build and what you can do on the mound, like, you've got somebody to kind of look at and say, maybe I can be that. Like, have you thought about that at all with a guy who's got a very similar mix, attacking guys in the same way, having success, being an all-star at the big league level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard not to look at him. I mean, he was the best reliever in the big leagues last year. And it was, we have the same pitch mix and everything. He throws a little bit harder than I do consistently, which is, that's him. But just seeing how he attacks pitchers and just like keeps his stuff in the zone and attacks his fastball at the top of the zone and splitter down off of that. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do this year. It's nothing really that special in terms of trying to like be perfect with each pitch. It's, dominating the top of the zone with a rising fastball and let the split play off of it, especially because we're coming from probably, I would say he's around the same, that 6'7", 6'8" release point. It's really hard to try to compensate for both of those pitches when one's at the top and one's dropping off the bottom like that. And then the cutter, and he has a slider, I believe. So, it's a tough mix to hit against for sure. We got some really good hitters, and it's great that our org is so filled top to bottom that I can face all these great hitters and live BP and really showcase my stuff against them, talk to them after and see how they're reacting to certain pitches and stuff. So, modeling a lot of what I have off of Bautista, obviously, and then just kind of seeing how the hitters react to a lot of it.
So we will get back to our conversation with Orioles relief prospect Keegan Gillis in just a second. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, for me, recently, has been the most exciting, the most fun way to play fantasy sports, really, on a daily basis. And on Prize Picks, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks. It is America's #1 fantasy sports app, and they even offer injury insurance. So if your entries play because they get injured, you don't have to worry about it. Now, I'm looking at Prize Picks, and right now I am on a 1-1 track. So it's not, the best, but let's see if I can recover here on a Wednesday night pick. And we are looking for some, let's go with Donovan Clingan, the center for UConn, less or more 7.5 rebounds against Marquette. It's a big game for them. Let's go with more rebounds for Donovan Clingan. So you can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that is code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I got to just ask for the data nerds. I know there are many listening to this podcast. I know you're in the upper 90s with the fastball. What does that IVB, the vertical break, look like for you right now?
It's been with the minor league balls, it's been right around 22-ish, 20, gotten it up to like 24 this offseason. But kind of switching with big league balls now, it's definitely a different type of regimen. It's a different ball altogether. So right now, that's kind of what I'm doing, is getting used to these big league balls and trying to get all these metrics to add up to what it was with the minor league ball.
It's 18 good, 20 great. That's kind of like what people talk about with the break there.
18 is great. 18 is great, especially with big league balls. If you're 18 plus, that is a very good situation. If you're 20, that's elite of the elite right there for sure.
That's Felix Bautista levels, right?
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah. I don't think anybody beat him last year in terms of velocity with the vert he had. I think he was the best in the league for sure.
It's what makes him unfair. It's truly unfair, and that's before he throws a splitter at you. That is maybe the most unhittable pitch in baseball. So
exactly,
that's what Keegan Gillis is looking for in the big league career. Is that
no doubt about it
stuff? But you've been through this system now in Delmarva and in Aberdeen, and then in Bowie last year. And you talked a little bit about working with Forrest Herman. I just did want to ask, and you can divulge as much or as little as you want, just how does that work together when a lot of players in this age of baseball are going to different facilities in the offseason? And we know the Orioles even have like agreements with certain facilities and guys they work with closely and guys they've directly hired from as pitching coaches. How does that transition work? Like you leave Top Velocity and you get to Sarasota and you're working with different guys. How does that transition work for you? Because you obviously have goals, but certainly the Orioles have goals for you. And I'm sure the facilities players work at have goals for you guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of those goals intertwine in many ways. I mean, we're all looking for the same thing. We're all striving for the same thing. And a lot of that is just coming in there. They allow you to kind of do your own thing. A lot of what we do is what got us here in the first place. So they don't want to take that away from us, because if they do, then we lose a lot of what we have. A lot of that confidence goes out the door too. If I'm not able to do certain things in my routine, or they shut down like my med ball throws or something like that, that would affect me in certain ways, because that's what keeps me consistent, especially through a long, 6 to 8 month season. I mean, that's a long time away from facilities, away from training. So a lot of that stuff you have to do throughout a season, or you're going to lose, velocity, you're going to lose confidence, you're going to lose a lot of stuff. So I think they understand that. And a lot of the goals, like I said, are, we're all searching for the same thing. We all want to get to the big leagues. They all want to get us to the big leagues. So I think, Forrest was great at, pitch design and helping us work through that during the season. And, towards the end of the season, he wanted me to change my splitter a little bit, and I trusted him with it, and it started to work at the end of the season. So I kind of just ran with it in the facility this year, and just started hunkering down on it and trying to be as consistent as possible with it.
So what's the big goal for 2024 now? You go into spring training knowing that you've had some AA success. I mean, I don't know if even starting in Norfolk is potentially in the cards, but what do the goals look like this year?
I mean, the goal is ultimately to, get to the big leagues. That's the main goal this year. I have the stuff, I have, everything that needs to be there. It's just the consistency at this point. Wherever I start, whether it's AA, AAA, it doesn't matter. The ultimate goal is to get to, Baltimore at the end of the day. So, if I start in AA, that's great. Try to get out there as quick as I can, just go in there and do my thing. There's nothing really special I need to do. Just go in there, handle my business, and I think I'll be on my way up.
Nastiest pitcher beside yourself that you've been teammates with in the O system? Like whose stuff you either want or is just
Man,
ridiculous when you watch it?
recently being at the big league side and just seeing Wanderson Charles, he is Bautista Jr. I mean, it's pretty incredible what he can do. He's sitting 99 with, the same splitter profile as we're talking about before. He is electric to watch. It's very fun to watch him. I know I didn't play with him last year at all, but just hearing the stories and actually seeing him, throw, whether it's, on Twitter or online, and then actually seeing him throw this year live in games, it's pretty electric to say the least.
Yeah, he's certainly in a fight potentially for an opening day role in the O's bullpen as well. There's some openings for him, and to bring him back again after not bringing him up to the big leagues last year, they certainly see something there with Wanderson Charles. So on the flip side, the hitter you've played with, and I'm going to make one stipulation: you can't say Jackson Holiday. That's the easy way out.
Oh,
The
yeah,
hitter you have
of
played
course,
with
of course.
that you just don't want to see in the box.
Man, it's hard. Our org is top to bottom incredible. I mean, it's hard to pick really one guy, but off the season last year when I came up to AA and saw him, it was Billy Cook. I mean, that guy he can swing it, and he's got the pop with it too. I mean, the amount of home runs I saw him hit when I got up to AA, it's pretty impressive what he can do at the plate. And he's a tough at bat too. He's not going to swing at, a ball to ball. If he's going to swing through a pitch, it's got to be ball to strike or strike the ball. Sorry. But yeah, he's not going to miss any of those pitches that are down the zone. So yeah, he's a tough at bat, especially. I think he's probably one that I'd look out for sure.
I just had to ask you two Tulane/New Orleans Central questions. And the first one is, what's it been like to have Hudson Haskin and Colin Burns both in this system? And you guys were teammates at Tulane, and the two of them are also kind of trying to move up this system and get to the big leagues. I know that's a couple of hitters and you on the pitching side, but what's it been like to have them both in this O system as well?
It's great. I mean, when we first get drafted, you're getting into a new organization. This is completely, different from college baseball in a lot of ways. So Huddy had been here for, I don't know, almost 2 years at that point. So coming in and, he gave me a lot of advice going into it about, play styles, a lot of different things. Just coming in the pro ball in general, having him to kind of guide you through a little bit, give you some words of advice on how to, get through the org, because he moved very quickly through it. It was great to have him there. And then getting drafted with Colin, coming in, knowing people. It's always great coming into an organization when you actually know people. Makes it a little bit easier, makes it a lot more fun. So we always get, the Orioles love Tulane and stuff because they have 3 Tulane guys, which is great. It's awesome coming into the facility every day and seeing those guys.
It's a good program to draft from. So
Absolutely.
might as well just continue.
No doubt about it.
I got to ask, and it's okay if you make some people upset listening to this podcast. I know you're a New Orleans guy, right? It's all the seafood down there, but you're in the Baltimore area and we're going to talk about crabs. Is there any way you think at any point in your career, you're a 10-year big leaguer with the Orioles, is there at any point where you would say a Maryland crab is better than any kind of seafood you'd ever get in New Orleans?
Oh man, you're trying to stir the pot here, huh?
You can say no comment. That's okay.
Honestly, when I came up to Maryland, I heard a lot about the crabs, and I was like, we'll see. Honestly, I think they're pretty good. The crab cakes are very good in my own opinion. In terms of if it's better, not a chance. There's no chance. If I'm there for 10 years, I still don't think I would say they're better. I mean, I just, it's tough. It's tough to really kind of stipulate between those two. But yeah, Old Bay is not really my favorite. Honestly, I know I'm going to make a lot of people mad saying that. It's not my favorite, but overall, Maryland's got some good food. I can't really hate too much on their stuff.
Yeah, if you're punching guys out in the big leagues in an Oriole uniform, everybody listening will forget that you just took a shot at Old Bay. So there you go. Nobody will care. Yeah, nobody will care. That's all. Keegan, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And good luck to you this season. And the hope is that we see that fastball splitter at some point at Camden Yards here in 2024.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
So our thanks again to Orioles minor leaguer Keegan Gillis for joining the podcast. Really cool conversation there, taking a look at the data that pitchers look at, the offseason work. And really, I thought the most interesting part there is is how they put it together, right? Because you're working with all these great pitching coaches in the Orioles system, but then a lot of these guys at this point in baseball, they're going to different facilities in the offseason, working with other coaches. They've got their own goals as pitchers. How does it all come together? Thought that answer was really cool from Keegan to hear about, and it's just great insight. It's also funny to hear about like what goes on at minor league camp, right? You're just waiting for that call up to a big league game. You get on the bus, you never know if you're going to pitch, and Keegan, as you mentioned, has thrown 3 pitches so far at big league camp, and hopefully he gets more, and hopefully I do think he can get into big league games this year. Like, no question, I think he spends the majority of the season up in AAA Norfolk, but he said it. He's got the stuff to be a big leaguer. It's just about consistency for him. I mean, that stuff, it's eerily similar. The body type, the stuff, what he throws, he's just 98 instead of 101, but it's eerily similar to Felix Bautista. And with the Orioles not having Felix all of this year, I'm not saying Keegan Gillis is going to be just a 1-for-1 replacement, but he could be certainly helpful for this O's bullpen this year. My prediction is we see Gillis throw a pitch, and hopefully more, in an Orioles uniform in 2024. But thanks so much to him for joining the podcast. One more thing before we go. Remember, we are doing a giveaway here on the pod to celebrate getting over 6,000 subscribers here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. That is thanks to you all. We are giving away the Jim Palmer statue, a replica of the one out with the statues in center field at Oriole Park. It has the box with it as well. Don't worry. And here is what you have to do to get the Jim Palmer statue. Number one, subscribe to the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're watching. Second thing is post in the comments of any video this week, but since you're already here, might as well be for today's episode. Post in the comments, Jim Palmer was amazing. After that, there was a little lull. There was good Orioles pitching. And then we got Mike Mussina, and he was amazing. But after Mike Mussina, it feels like maybe until Bradish last year or probably Corbin Burns this year, the O's haven't had a true ace again. So in that time between, since Mike Mussina left for the Yankees in free agency in early 2000, who do you feel has been the best pitcher for the Orioles, best starting pitcher since Mike Mussina? Put that answer in the comments, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, and you will be entered to win the Jim Palmer statue. The entries will close Friday night on March 8th at midnight. I will draw the names on Saturday and then tune back in at the end of Monday's episode to see which person has won right here. There it is. There it is. The Jim Palmer statue. But thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow with a Friday episode. Looks like that's when I will do Orioles opening day roster prediction 3.0. It is tough to parse out what they're going to do, but I'm going to try on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.